Our first speaker tonight is Mona Lisa Wallace. Right here in the red, Mona is a partner. She's a partner in Wallace & Graham, PA, a nationally recognized law firm here in Salisbury. She's on the Board of Trustees. And Mona shared with me that in her career years ago, she was in the judge's chambers with a bunch of male lawyers. And as she walked up to them, they said, "You might not want to stay because we're telling blonde jokes." And she said, "Well, I'm not a natural blonde, so I think I'll just stay." Mona's going to talk about equity in the workplace. Thanks, Mona.
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, I never married a quarterback at a college. But it's funny, when Darlene stands up, I never know what you're going to say, and I learn something new about you every time. But she is the chairman of our Board of Trustees, the first woman, I believe, and is doing an amazing job. So thank you for everything you're doing. I can't tell you how delighted I am to be here. I'm the mother. My husband and I have two young, beautiful girls. One's a lawyer with me at Wallace & Graham, and the other goes to that word Duke and is in the master's program. But I do have to tell you something personal. My daughter is in the hospital as we speak with her husband, having our first grandchild. And so when I'm heading back, and she's just lovely, but this is the point, Darlene, when I let them read what I was going to say, and he has a master's degree in marketing, and she will be taking off 2 months' work, and he will be taking off 2 weeks' work. And that's important because when you hear what I have to say, that is why women continue to not make as much in the workforce. But she has a very kind boss that will let her come and go in her job, so that's one of the issues we're going to talk about. Real fast, I have 10 minutes. When I started out, oh my goodness, if I knew then what I know now. So I really want to talk to you a minute. I started out in 1979. I went to Wake Law School. No one would hire me in the South to be a trial lawyer in 1979. My job offers were secretaries or paralegals for the other lawyers. And eventually I was hired. But for literally a decade, there were no women lawyers. Every judge, virtually every judge that I had to have a case in front of back then, that's over 30 years ago, was an older gentleman whose wife nor daughters had been in the workforce. So I remember one of the very first cases I tried in about 1981 in Gastonia. The judge asked me to go type up the order while he sat in the chambers with the other lawyer, and I'd won in front of the jury. And bottom line, I didn't do it. But I didn't see it coming. You know, you didn't kind of expect it. And so I just want to give you some statistics. In October 2013, there was a major study done by the Pew Charitable Trust looking at workplace inequalities now and in society in general. And I'm relying on that a little bit about what I share with you. So in 1980, about the time I started, the median hourly wage for a woman was 64% of what a man made. And today it is 84%, which means while you're starting out in the workforce, you still do not have parity. You have near parity with men. Now about half of the young women who or between the ages or under 30 are working. It was much less in 1980. Younger women are working now than ever before. When you graduate, they're predicting about 76% of the young women your age will be in the labor force. Interesting statistic. Do you think there are more women or men in college? Well, there are more women graduates than male graduates in college. There are more women who have bachelor's degrees. 38% of women 25 to 32 have bachelor's degrees, as opposed to 31% of men. And this one was interesting. Less men are actually going into the labor force now than before. In 1980, it was 78% of the men going into the labor force, according to the Pew study. Today, it is 70%. All right. Now, the question is, if we've come that far from 1979 or 80 until now, do we really have full equality? And I will tell you that 75% of the thousands of women who were just asked that question said absolutely not. Does that surprise you? Women still, while we're near parity, I gave you the number of 84%, we still do not make as much as men. Women are still being typecast for certain jobs. While there are so many more women who are lawyers, and I am a partner in our firm, and I actually started our firm, and we have 60 to 70 staff, 12 lawyers. We're a big firm out of Salisbury, but there are few women partners. Do you know what I'm saying? Partners in men firms. And there was a study done 2 years ago in New York City. They actually pulled the docket for the big cases going to trial in New York City, and only 12% of the lawyers in the key lead cases were women, which I still find that to be essentially true. I guess probably now I would have to say about 70% of the lawyers that I go against are men, and they're generally the partners or the key partners in the firm. So while lawyers are coming around, it's still, I think, a dominated world in the legal profession with men. The judges, the appellate judges, the federal judges, still probably a third of them are women, but 2/3 are men. All right? Does it get better the longer that you work? Meaning, if you go out into the workforce and you're 28 and you get a job, and I said earlier, you're earning about 84%, generally speaking. I think the rule is something like a woman who goes out in the workforce today, it's $14 and something an hour. A male, it's $17 an hour. Well, the longer you work, do you kind of catch up? Does it get better for women? What do you think? Actually, the spread gets longer or wider for women as opposed to better over time now. Why do you think that is? Men get the promotions, women don't. A lot of that is the fault of women, because women do not step up. They don't mentor each other, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and they don't ask for it. And you get essentially what you asked for. But you know, when I mentioned to my daughter, I did it for a reason, because women still are the ones who generally take off more work for the family. So that makes sense then to men. Although men are becoming amazingly supportive on that. So right now at Wallace & Graham, we have a male lawyer whose wife's getting ready to have a baby. He's taken off 4 weeks. I actually had a female lawyer who worked for me, whose husband quit his job, and he's the primary caretaker. So it is changing. But if you look at it statistically, in the Pew Commission report, 59% of women say that being a working parent makes it harder to advance in their job, as opposed to the 59% of women who say that. Only 19% of men say it makes it more difficult to be a parent to advance in their job. How many women have reported that they've quit their jobs in the last few years, percentage-wise, versus men for family reasons? The answer is 22% of women report having quit jobs for family reasons during their working lives, as opposed to 9% of men. So the reason the gap gets wider overall, and it is moving, and I mean, from where I started, it has moved 89%, because I started out 35 years ago. You have no idea, especially as a trial lawyer in the South. And the South, to me, was a little bit more difficult. But it is moving up, but the things and the reasons that it continues for the gap to widen is, there is still a problem with gender discrimination. There is still a problem with gender discrimination. When I go into a big case and I am with a male lawyer or an older lawyer, I can think of a mediation I had about a year ago in Florida. I had a death case in Florida, and I hired a Florida male co-counsel. And when I flew down and we went in the mediation room with the men who were the CEOs and the accountants for the company, they were all men but me, it was my case. And it was a male mediator. And I'm sorry, but they sort of ignored me. And by the way, you know how that case, what happened? It was fascinating. There was one more woman in the room, and she sat in the back and didn't say anything. And as it turned out, the men were all talking, and they were drinking coffee, and they went out to lunch. We were sort of sitting back there. She was the head of AIG, and she and I settled the case. But anyway, yes, there's still, it's really, and to this day we're friends, by the way. There's still problems with gender stereotypes. Yes, there still are people out there that are going to look at you because you're a woman. We're still not quite there yet. I have had a unique career because in 1992, I became a public interest lawyer. I joined a firm called Public Interest, Trial Lawyers for Public Interest. Not for money, but just to hold companies accountable and to help women and other minorities. We are actually the largest law firm in America that was pro bono, and I was president in 2010. And we've brought all the Title IX cases, I bet you didn't know that, for equality, for students in sports at the different colleges and universities. We've also been involved in bringing lawsuits for equal pay and equal promotions for women's. So, and by the way, the individuals who've been involved in those cases have been women lawyers. So women have helped women, particularly in the legal field, which is why we also brought some of the cases, and I can tell you about them, but I don't have time, but if you have questions, but we actually brought lawsuits against the organizations that didn't admit women, the civic organizations. So through public justice, and I'm still the North Carolina representative for that public interest firm, we've continued to help with equality in a lot of areas. All right. Questions? Why are we still not equal, and what can we do to be equal? Well, women, they are hesitant to push for raises and promotions. They really are. A lot of times women don't ask to be, and some don't aspire to be in higher positions. I was extremely proud this year to learn that General Motors, did y'all know, has a new CEO who's a woman? Yahoo has a new CEO who is a woman. They're doing exceptionally well. But if you look at Fortune 500 or the Fortune 1000 top companies, what percentage of women CEOs do you think there is? 4.5%. So anyway, we're sort of getting there, I believe, and I know someone else here is going to talk about it, but women's inability and lack of commitment to mentor other women is one of the primary reasons, again, that I still think that we are lagging behind. I wrote down just 10 suggestions. There's just so many things now that I would do differently. By the way, the thing that I would do differently the most is I would have found a mentor, and I would have had someone to talk with me like this panel is talking to you. I have always dressed like a woman, behaved like a lady, and never tried to, in a man's world, you know what I'm saying, have the attitude. And I think that's actually to me a lot. But my 10 things: keep your head down, work hard, and know your stuff. I promise you, I worked harder. I mean, when my kids were born, I worked at night all the time. I never made cupcakes or cookies and all of that stuff. I bought them all, of course. But I did have a really supportive husband. Establish a group of mentors, number 2. Number 3, have the confidence to take the risk. Number 4, let people know what you do well. You might not do a lot, but what you do well, let them know that. Number 5, don't be afraid of being a woman. That's who you are. Number 6, my most important in today's world, beware of the internet. If I put it in writing on the internet, I assume the state bar will read it, my mother, and every judge I will appear in front of. All right. 7, I'm sorry. Don't care so much about what other people think. 8, keep an open mind. You know, keep an open mind and you're going to be successful because you're going to find it or it's going to find you. Number 9, be brave. And number 10, my daughters say sometimes, maybe I don't mean this, but I promise you I do. Do what makes you happy, whatever that is. I love what I do. I've always been happy with what I do. So do what makes you happy. Thank you.
Thanks, Mona. Okay.